Right, and then clicking record and we'll be off to the races. All right, and we are live. Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to another NGSBA webinar. My name is Michael Quidal, Associate Director of Marketing for the New Jersey School Boards Association, and thank you so much for joining us this morning as we talk about today's topic, the 2025 new board member self-evaluation. Join us this morning for an insightful NGSBA webinar using our newly revised board self-eval form. This session will focus on the importance of how a board self-evaluation fosters accountability, continuous improvement, and student achievement. Learn this morning how NGSBA's evaluation tool compiles individual assessments into an anonymous summary, ensuring a transparent and constructive review of the board's performance as a governance team. Discover how your field service representative can help analyze results, identify strengths and areas for growth, and set priorities for future board goals. Don't miss this opportunity to enhance your board's effectiveness and commitment to excellence. As always, this webinar for all those here currently live in the Zoom room does offer one BMA, one board member academy credit that will be reflected on your transcript within a business day or two. Just give us a couple business days for that to be reflected on your transcript due to it being a manual process on our end. But thank you all for joining us here live in the room. If you're watching on YouTube, thank you as well. And if you're watching us on recording, thank you as well. We're so happy to have you. A couple things regarding the Zoom features really quickly before we get going here. Towards the right side of your buttons, you will see the CC button. As always, that is your closed captioning functionality. If you click that, it will allow you to view the closed captioning of this session. You'll also be able to view and save the entire transcript of the webinar if you need it. We do ask you, the Q&A function is turned on, so if you have any questions pertaining to any of the content you see here today, we do encourage you to use the Q&A function. Just gives us a better way to organize the questions coming in. The chat function is also turned on. So if you want to say hi, tell us where you're from, drop us a comment, please use the chat function. We're always happy to hear you. We are monitoring both. I want to let everyone know, attendees of this webinar should be aware that the views expressed by non-NGSBA employees, whether it's in the chat or anything, and outside speakers or panels are intended purely for informational purposes and do not necessarily represent the views, opinion, or mission of the New Jersey School Boards Association. NGSBA remains committed to providing nonpartisan and apolitical information, resources, and advocacy to advance public education and promote the achievement of all students through effective governance. Finally, today's session is being recorded and will be available on NGSBA's website under the trainings tab. You can click webinars, that you will see all of our previous webinars and a lot of great webinars upcoming as well. And the session will also be available on the conference site. So Swoogo, how you came in here, joining us live here this morning, along with the slide deck. So that's it for me today. It is now my great pleasure to introduce Gwen Thornton, Senior Director of Content for the New Jersey School Boards Association. Good morning, Gwen.
Thank you, Michael. It's a pleasure to see all of you here this morning. We are looking forward to sharing with you the revised board self-evaluation. It is the first time in a number of years that we have made changes, and we do believe this will be a more helpful tool to all of you. With me this morning is Tim Teahan. I'm going to turn it over to him to introduce himself and to kick off the program. Tim?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Tim Teahan. I am a field service rep, and I cover Monmouth County and the upper part of Ocean County. And as Gwen said, we're going to present today on the new board self-evaluation. And so if you have any questions throughout, by all means, use the Q&A as Michael said, and we will, if I'm presenting, then Gwen will interrupt if she needs to, and pose the question, and we'll try to answer them as we go along. All right, so here we go. So this is the school board's annual self-evaluation. So really, what is the self-evaluation for those that don't know? It is really an opportunity for board members to really reflect on how they, as an individual board member, and how their whole team is working together. And the goal of board self-evaluation is to be reflective. We all know that there can always be improvement, And that's what this is all about. This is about trying to figure out, what's working, what's not working, and how we can actually be better at being board members. Because ultimately, the best that you are positively impacts the students within your district. So understand that unlike the superintendent evaluation, the board self-evaluation can be completed by all board members. There's no such thing as a conflict for a board member when it comes to the board self-evaluation. When you're doing this, you are evaluating yourself and the team. That's it. Not the superintendent within this evaluation, not any other staff members, strictly just the board members and how you're operating. There is no statutory deadline. So unlike the superintendent evaluation, which does have a July 1 statutory deadline, that's a plug and a reminder to make sure you get that CSA evaluation done on time. Although the CSA evaluation is required to be completed, a board self-evaluation is not. However, it is a best practice. If you think about within a school district, who else is doing these self-reflections? Everybody that works in the school district does. We just said the superintendent evaluation, that is a self-reflection. The superintendent is reflecting on how he or she is performing in their job, and they're providing evidence to support that. All your administrators, whether they're district or they're building administrators, supervisors, they're all creating self-evaluations, and they're completing their own reflection pieces that their administrator that's above them is using in completing their evaluation. For teachers, they do the same thing. They create what's called a documentation log. In districts, they might call it something different, but it's essentially a self-reflection piece. They're looking at and providing evidence to how well they're doing in the different aspects of their job. So if everybody else is doing it, why not join in and do it as well? Because self-reflection is a very powerful tool where you can be honest with yourself. And as you look at the visual on this slide, you're a pawn piece in a chess match, but yet when you look in the mirror, you see something much better. And a lot of times when we look at the self-evaluation results, a lot of times you'll see individual board members will rate themselves very high, but then when it comes to looking at the whole board team, those scores tend to be a little bit lower. Now, if you think about what is a board member as an individual really has no power. The power and the impact really comes when the team is working well together, because any action that you're doing as a board is as a team. So really what you want to see when you're looking at your self-reflection and self-evaluation is that your team numbers are actually higher than the individual numbers. That means when the individuals come together, they are much more powerful as a team. And that's really what you're striving to do. So the board self-evaluation is an opportunity to improve the governance and management of your team to be better as board members. The results that are created and compiled at the end, after everyone completes it, is actually used to develop those future board goals. So it provides you insights into, where are some of your areas that you could possibly experience some challenges that you can possibly grow in, and where are the areas that your team is really doing well in that you can still maintain or maybe even improve a little, but definitely maintain, because you don't want to have anything slip back. It brings the individuals of the team together as a team. So you understand, where you as a team are working, where you're not. It sets standards for board conduct and operations, because you do not want to be that board that everyone is tuning into to see the crazy mayhem that's occurring. Because, although as I always say, like as a recovering superintendent, because I was a superintendent that retired, when you have a really bad day, a lot of times you will tune into those boards that are going absolutely crazy, because then you look at your own and you say, wow, we're pretty good. I feel good about where we are as a district. So don't be that district, be the district that actually serves as a model for not only your students, but for other boards. And so doing a self-evaluation will allow you to do that. So how is this actually done? It's actually a very, very simple process. You're going to complete this once a year. And you may include the chief school administrator, also known as the superintendent. You may have that person completed as well, but it's not required. Some districts will include their superintendent and ask them to participate, and others will not. Just remember that your superintendent is a non-voting member of your board. So getting their input and insight can be very helpful to your team. The evaluation actually focuses on 6 areas of board governance, and we're going to break those 6 areas down. Your field service rep, so whenever you see FSR, that's field service rep, that's what I am. They will help your team. So when your team has finished entering, each individual has finished entering their individual self-reflection and evaluation, your field service rep will compile those results. They will send you the summary or bring in the summary, and then they will actually more than happy to go over with your board the findings from the self-evaluation and help your team look at the areas within that evaluation where you might be able to develop specific goals that are within your roles and responsibilities as a board member.
Can I interrupt for a moment?
Absolutely.
We have a question.
Absolutely.
Can you share what is the rationale to include or exclude your superintendent?
So the rationale to include them would be that they're a non-voting board member and they have a perspective because they're working with each individual board member on really a daily basis, but they're also working with you as a team. So they're very aware of how a district is supposed to run, and they can also see some of the struggles that you as a team may be, because they're not directly involved in the decision making in terms of the vote when it comes down to voting on resolutions. So they can give you their insight. Why you may not want to include them is you may feel as a team that you only want the voting members to be part of the evaluation, or those people that are elected into those positions. So it's really just a personal preference within the district. I've seen it both ways. So it's just another voice if you want that other voice within the evaluation. Hopefully that answers that. I don't know if you have anything else you want to add to that, Gwen.
No, I don't. I would just suggest that very strongly that your superintendent is a member of the board, albeit without a vote, and has a different perspective by virtue of being responsible for the day-to-day operations. And so that perspective is often very helpful to give the board better insights around how they are working as a team and how it relates to the work that he or she as a superintendent, the work they're doing.
Good, I agree. So the timelines for completing a self-evaluation, it's really up to the district. Many districts, though, will try to time it with the creation of the district goals. And so a lot of times districts will create district goals, at the end of June or over the summer months. So they will try to time and having their board complete their self-evaluation so they get the results ahead of time so that they can actually create board goals around the same time. And that's very helpful because it keeps both your district goals and your board goals on that same timeline and structure. And so that when you're reporting out the progress on the district goals, the board can also report out at the exact same time the progress on the board goals. And so it really creates a unified approach and communication strategy within the district. But some districts will decide to do it instead, either prior to or right after reorganization. The prior to reorganization would be because now that particular board team has worked together for the complete year. And prior to the reorganization, it's a way to reflect on what they've been able to accomplish over that year, so that starting for the next calendar year from January to December, whoever's on the board at that time can look at those, what worked and what didn't work and what were the goals that were developed, so they can join the team and then move forward. Others will wait until after reorganization, because these are now the new board members that are the new team, so to speak. And so they may do a reflection at that point. The downside of that is that the new board members really don't have anything to reflect on because they're brand new to the team. But it is helpful to them to hear from other board members. So it's really just a personal preference. I do believe, and Gwen, can correct me if it's different, but I do believe most boards do their board self-evaluations usually around the May, June, July, August time period.
And that is representative of most districts across the state. We would encourage you, of course, to first complete the superintendent's eval because of that statutory timeline, July 1st. So I used to tell my boards routinely, finish that first and then do your board self-evaluation and then do your goal setting. Because the board goals you set should ultimately support the district goals that are set. So doing it in conjunction with the two ensures that the board goals are aligned to the district goals, which are really around everything in your district and moving student achievement forward.
So when you log into the platform, you're basically going to choose the district. So you would just simply click which district you are, and then you're going to see something along the lines of this. And really, when you see the red arrow here on the screen, that's pointing to enhance the value of every voice and contributing to a meaningful evaluation outcome. All fields in the evaluation tool require a response. So in other words, if there's a question that's there or a rating that you need to provide, you do need to provide it for every single item within the evaluation. Otherwise, you won't be able to proceed. And it's important because you really want to have a full voice, not just providing your voice on the areas that you want to speak about. You're speaking about all of it. So when you look at this chart, on the right-hand side, it says who participates. You can kind of see here where it's broken up. So on the first one, board's overall performance in the 6 leadership standards, because remember we said there's 6 areas, it'll be board members and superintendent. And then the board's overall strengths and overall challenges, also known as opportunities within each one of the 6 areas. That would be the board members and the superintendent. Individual members' contribution, that is the board members only. The superintendent won't complete that part. So when the superintendent logs in, they won't even be presented with that section. The board goals, if your district has not created board goals in the past, then you won't have any, and therefore you won't be evaluating yourself on those. So you would skip that section if there are no board goals. But this would also be board members only. And then the overall reflective questions, that's looking back, and these are questions that are going to basically ask you where are the strengths and challenges. That would be the board members and the superintendent. The actual compilation of the report and all the summary charts that go along with it, that will be done by your field service rep. And as I said before, your field service rep will come in. They're happy to present it to you. I've had a couple of districts that wanted to do it on their own, and that's totally fine too. We support that. We're still there for question and answers, but most districts will have your field service rep come in. So it's really just a preference. But once again, can't stress it enough, you need to fill out every field. So these are the ratings, and these actually align with the CSA evaluation. So it's wonderful because you don't have to learn anything new, because as Gwen said, your priority is going to be that CSA evaluation, and these will be the same standards or rating scales that you're going to be using. 4 will be exemplary, which means it's happening all the time or almost all the time. 3 is proficient, which means it's happening most of the time. 2 is an area for growth. It happens some of the times, but it probably could happen more often. And then 1 would be unsatisfactory, meaning it rarely happens, maybe once in a blue moon. The not observed doesn't give a number score, and that's okay too, because if you have a board member that just joined your team, they really don't have the longitudinal time to be able to be reflective. And there may be things that they have not observed in their short time as a board member. So it's okay for them to type in or select the not observed. And that just means that you don't have enough information to do that. And that's fine. So either way, you're going to give a rating of one of these different areas. So when you first start, in the NJSBA platform, also known as the census, it's very important that your board business administrator puts in and identifies who is the actual board president, because the board president has a very important role in this with this platform to do before the evaluation actually becomes available to all the other board members. And that is that the board president must log in first and enter the board goal information. So if they have, whatever number of board goals they had for the previous year, the board president would log in, the board president would then type in all the different goals. And that's important because then when all the board members log in and the superintendent, if they're part of this, they then would then be able to evaluate how how their team has done on each one of those board goals. As you see in the upper left-hand side, where you see the red circle, if there are no board goals, if your team has never had a board goal or hasn't had it in the past year, then you would simply click that box. And then that section, as I said earlier, that section for board goals would not appear to you as a board member that's filling out the reflection. And then you'll see in the middle section here, you can enter up to 5 goals. So we always recommend at school boards you do 3 to 5, so that 3 to 5 goals, so that you're focused on just that part. You also see right below that the president can add 1 hyperlink to evidence of progress on a goal. So if you have, like, say, a Google Doc, you can put your hyperlink there. If you have a PDF that's available to anyone that has the hyperlink, you can put that link in there as well. So it's however you're managing it, if you want to put in or attach any kind of evidence to support it. And so I'm going to turn it over to Gwen at this point.
Tim, could you go back one slide? I
Yes,
just
I
wanted
can.
to point out, if you do not have board goals, all your president has to do is to check the box on the left-hand side. You can see it in red. And once that your board president checks there are no board goals, then the document is open to everyone. So if you don't have board goals, you don't have to fret. You still get to do the self-evaluation. This assessment of progress on board goals is a new piece that we've added. We hold the superintendent accountable for progress toward achievement of district goals. And oftentimes boards create board goals, but sometimes or frequently, they don't take the time to assess what kind of progress they've made. So in order to truly make it a worthwhile reflection, and it's okay if you haven't done anything on a board goal because perhaps there were situations that arose that took precedence and there was no time to do it, completely understandable, then the goal may move forward to the following year if it's still relevant to your particular board. But it is helpful to at least look at those board goals and see what you've accomplished. You may be surprised you've gotten way more done than you had anticipated you would be able to do. So it can be very affirming. And at the same time, if you haven't been able to focus on them, they can be continued and you can move them forward to the following year. So we have added this because we believe that it's important to hold yourselves accountable in a concrete way toward progress of goals. In the same fashion, we expect our staff, whether it's supervisors and directors, through reports to their superiors, and for you in particular, the superintendent, the one employee the board evaluates, to hold them accountable for progress on goals. Thanks, Tim.
No problem.
So again, moving forward, you can see here is what it looks like around the goals. Again, this mirrors very closely the superintendent's evaluation, whether that goal was achieved, whether satisfactory progress was made, or little or no progress was made. And then you will be able to provide your feedback on each individual goal. And you can see here on the slide where the board president in this instance included links to evidence of what was done to make progress on it. So again, the first board goal was to accomplish the superintendent's evaluation by July 1st, which is something a lot of boards struggle with. And clearly, in this instance, they were able to achieve that. So again, it's very helpful to have that. And again, you won't see this screen if there are no board goals. It would not appear on your board self-eval. Next slide, please. Thank you. Here are the standards. In the former self-eval, we had 9. We've sort of combined them. The first, and again, in large part, they mirror your responsibilities as Board of Education. The first one is around vision, mission, and goals. The second is around policy, student achievement, your governance team relationships and accountability, resource management and oversight, the finance facilities piece, and then community leadership. How are you engaging with your community? How are you providing information to your community and to your staff? All of these come out of the key works of school boards, which we know are those areas identified as being the most important for boards of education and districts that make progress on improving student achievement for all students. Next slide, please. So here's an example of the first standards. And again, it says your board is committed to a shared vision of our district's future, its mission and goals. They are focused on student achievement, which guides district strategies and reflect your community's values. As Tim pointed out earlier, but I want to point out again, because I'm sure some of you will call or email, which is perfectly fine, but you have to provide an assessment for each one of the individual indicators in each of the standards. And you must provide comments around your greatest strength in that area and the greatest challenge or opportunity you see in that area. Please take the time to do it and be thoughtful. The more information that you can provide individually for this self-evaluation, the more effective the overall evaluation will be. For those of you who have evaluations that are done by your superiors or the people that you work for, you know, we can improve anything if there's a rationale and an explanation of what has gone well, and perhaps any areas where we really need to provide, we need to do additional focus and perhaps need some coaching or some assistance, but you have to identify those areas to improve. So the more information you can provide, the better the overall outcomes of the compilation will be in guiding your board forward. Next slide. This is new as well, and this is really where your individual contribution to the team is going to be measured. And again, it asks you to look at the overall piece of what you have done and what you have contributed individually to the success of your team. And again, you know, we all are better together when we work together and collaborate. And so if you can identify if there are areas where perhaps you need to spend some additional time working with your colleagues, whether it's around board culture, whether it's around effective meetings and how to be more efficient in the time that you spend in board meetings or that you spend in committee meetings, and ensuring that you are in compliance with all of the laws and regulations and requirements around OPMA and OPRA. All of those are pieces that are measures of your board's success. And there's no comment section to this one because it's really meant for you to sit back and think about and reflect on, and then that will be very helpful. So again, there is an opportunity at the end of the document for you to consider and put forth what you believe are the best and the strengths of the board that you can build on. You know, when you have a challenge, we really can leverage our strengths to address those challenges. And knowing what our strengths are to address those challenges oftentimes is the easiest way to work together to overcome a challenge. And again, identifying those governance areas that you need to do more work on is also critically important as well, and helping to know what those challenges are so that as a team, you can find ways and set goals that will help your board address those challenges while leveraging your strengths to accomplish that end. Next slide, Tim, please.
Okay, there's one question. Why isn't there an option on the self-eval page for board members to rate themselves as poor or needs improvement? There actually is.
This one, it's a slide shot. It got cut off.
Yeah, it just got cut off. It's the same ratings going across. The reason why it was cut off was so that the screenshot, the text would be bigger so that you could actually read it. So realize that it is all of it.
It is all of it. We don't expect every board member to think they're perfect. Although I'm sure I would be. No, I'm kidding you. Again, I think being honest with yourself is very, very helpful. And just knowing that it's anonymous. No one's going to know who rated themselves how or any of the indicators because it is compiled and there are no names attached. All of you will be able to see the tracking report to see who's finished so that your board president can see who's finished and who's not. You all can see who's finished and who's not, and perhaps remind your other colleagues who may not have had time to finish it to go in and to do it so that your field service representative can compile it and get it back to you all in a timely way.
When there's two more, like by the same person, two questions, two parts. Why did you reduce the number of standards from 9 to 6? And the second part is a self-assessment of one's own individual contribution to the team collated and shared with other team members?
Yes, but it's all anonymous. It doesn't say board member A said X, board member B said this, board member C said that. It is compiled into one document so that you see the totality of everyone's contributions, but not individually who said what, so that you can feel comfortable expressing yourselves without fear of someone tagging something. It is all done anonymously so that no one can see what anyone has said individually. It's the collective outcomes that you will get back, the compilation, that will be of assistance for you.
And then why do we reduce it from 9 standards to 6?
Because we combined some of them, because some of them were very similar, and because a lot of them in the former self-eval focused more on the day-to-day operation and truth of the district, and because of the changing educational landscape, where board members' responsibilities have really sometimes not focused appropriately on their role, but rather on administration's role. And reflecting that change, we think is important. And because, let's face it, it is more challenging today than it has ever been to be a Board of Education member. There is more focus on the work that you do, and it has become critically more important to make sure that you are doing it as effectively as you can for your students. At the end of the day, you know, what you need to be focusing on and what is most important are the kids in your district. And so, you know, really taking the time to reflect so that you can move forward and making sure that the decisions that you are reaching are made with the best interests of every student in your district at the focus, at the heart, and not adult kinds of things that don't really impact student achievement. And in fact, can be a detriment if your board is spending inordinate amount of time. I often reflect on how much board time sometimes gets spent on determining a stipend of $1,000 or $2,000 versus how much time you spend reflecting on the data generated from student assessments and multiple assessments of student progress and discussing the instructional program. You know, sometimes we get focused on more minuscule things rather than the bigger picture. And we believe this will help you focus on the bigger picture at hand rather than those smaller items that are routine business functions or routinely areas of operation for the district. Next slide, please. So this is what a report will look like. Again, the individual member report, you can only see your own report. You will not be able to see any, you know, once you're finished, you'll be able to see it individually. Again, the tracking report, all members will be able to see it in terms of has your name and when you finished it. And that's it. That's all you can see. All the results are compiled together, and we can return those to you. It's done as a numerical average. And you can see this is what it would look like for just one of the standards, so that you can see where you are. So in looking at that, you can see that the one area that is a little lower than the other is engaging in district improvement through annual goal setting. Again, perhaps that's an area where you need to do some additional focus, depending upon what the other standards say. But certainly that's something. And then you will see just listed down what board members have said is the greatest strength and the greatest challenge in that standard. Next slide, please.
Okay, we had another question that popped up, which
Okay.
is, if the CSA completes the evaluation also, is his or her results part of the summary report? And if so, is there any way to separate, as a CSA could skew the results?
There is no way to separate it, and it's 1 of 7, 1 of 5, 1 of 9, 1 of 12. I don't think it would really skew the results significantly, but if that's a concern of the board, there's no requirement to include the superintendent in this process unless the board chooses to do so. So that's something you would need to discuss as a board and take into consideration if you had that concern.
And I would also just add in, if you look at this chart, you can actually see, not only do you see the average, but you actually see where the preponderance of scoring is falling. So if you look at the first one, half and half of the board is rating themselves in letter A in exemplary, and the other half are doing it proficient. In other words, they're pretty close. When you have somebody that's an outlier, so if you look down to like letter D, there's 2 that said exemplary, 4 that said proficient, 1 that said area for growth, and 1 that said not observed. Or even if you look at the one below that, it's 2 in exemplary, 5 in proficient, and then 1 all the way down in unsatisfactory. That 1 in unsatisfactory is like an outlier, because the majority of it is falling in the upper part of exemplary and proficient. So you can not only look at the average number, but you can also look at where they're falling. And that's something that your field service rep, if they come out to go over these results with you, can kind of point out. And once again, you won't know who that one outlier is on this particular area, but it's, once again, it's a perspective that you should at least consider and realize that somebody on the team, doesn't matter who, is rating differently than the rest of the team. And so it's worth a discussion point at least.
Absolutely. Here's what the chart will look like. This is dramatically different. We believe this is much easier for board members to look at and be able to have a better sense, because it includes percentages tied to each of the standards, and the percentage that said proficient or exemplary, the percentage of those folks who said area for growth. So if you look at this chart, for example, you can see that the area where there's the greatest percentage of board members that say it's an area for growth is in the governance team's relationships and accountability. So again, you could then go back and look at that individual standard and see where those scores fell out, same way Tim just articulated, looking at how things are moving. But we think that this is really a clearer way for you all to see, and much easier for board members to understand, and makes it really abundantly clear using percentages. And I think it'll give you a better sense. This is, prior to No Child Left Behind, which was done under several presidents ago, it was the first time that school districts disaggregated data around student performance and looked at it in a way very similar to the way this is done. Because when you disaggregate the data, it helps you to better understand it. And by having percentages tied to assessments, you can see clearly where the majority falls as proficient, where exemplary, if it may be the majority, and then where are those areas for growth? And what are we looking at in terms of how many people really have that concern? And then it can be addressed. So in much the same way that, we began disaggregating data for students and how helpful that was in identifying student needs and tying instruction and assessments to those student needs. This is very helpful, we believe, as well, to be able to tie your efforts for improvement to those areas that you've identified by disaggregating the data in this fashion. And again, anonymously, without identifying any individual board members, but looking at the overall collective operation of your board. And we think that this is a much more effective way for you to be able to assess the work that you've done, because it's difficult work. You're volunteers. We appreciate the work you're doing. And so if you go to the next slide, you can see that this is the way the old evaluation did it. And it becomes much harder to see because the division between those is not as discrete. And so we really believe that doing the charts in the way we're going to do it this year is much more effective. Tim, I don't know if you want to add anything to
and
that.
You'll still see this particular chart where it's comparing the previous year to the current year. Just understand that this year, even if you had done the self-evaluation last year, they're two different tools. So this year, this is what you would see. You would only see this year's results. When you go to next year, then you'll see the two bars, which will be this year plus next year. So just realize that this chart might not be as useful this year to you, but the following year it will be.
Okay. So just move next slide.
I just wanted to make sure there was no other.
So this is what you will see if you go to our landing page at www.njsba.org, go to field services. You will see the evaluations and process. You can click on the board self-evaluation. There are resources there. There's an FAQ, and there's actually a PDF of the actual self-evaluation document if you want to print that or look at it ahead of time before you fill it out, just to get a better sense of what's included. In the same way, we have those same kinds of resources, although more, obviously, for the superintendent's evaluation. So that's there for you. Again, the first step in the process, just as a reminder again, because it's different this year, is your board president has to go in first, enter the goals. If there are any, check the box. If there are no board goals, and then you'll be ready to rock and roll, and you can go in and enter your assessments of the various standards. Bye. So just remembering, and I know we're stressing this, but again, this is your opportunity to evaluate the board, your performance, and your efficacy. It is not to evaluate the district or the staff. Those concerns that you may have are addressed through the superintendent's evaluation. Please use this as an opportunity as a conscious governance tool for improvement. That's its intent. It is not designed to go after any one board member or your board team. It's designed around how can we improve what we do and be more effective in how we operate and how we as a board can support the district in moving those districts forward. Okay.
Gwen, I have another question.
Sure.
Does NJSBA have a webinar or guidance document on creating board goals?
We don't have a webinar on that. Well, we have a webinar on goal setting, and in that goal setting is for both district and board goals. Your FSR can also come out and talk to the board about setting board goals. If you haven't any right now, you probably are well served by waiting till sort of the end of this school year. Have your field service representative can come out and assist you in setting both district as well as board goals moving forward. So if you don't have them currently, we certainly can assist you in that process. And we routinely do. And we can suggest to you some goals that have been boards have used. You may have seen in the example that we used here, one of them, which seems fairly simplistic, was to complete the superintendent's evaluation by July 1. That was a board goal in many districts that struggled to get that accomplished because they hadn't started soon enough. And so making that statutory timeline to be in compliance with the CUSAC requirements was a real struggle. but they accomplished that goal in this past year. So we can suggest to you a number of other goals based on the outcomes from your self-assessment or based on a discussion that you may have as a team with your superintendent or not with your superintendent, but again, that's solely up to all of you. But you can have a discussion as a board around what goals should look like and what goals would be most important for you to have. We just believe that this tool will help you have that discussion and keep your governance responsibilities top of mind, because it does make a difference in how the board operates. It makes a difference in how your staff and your community view the Board of Education. You depend on them for their trust, and you want to maintain their trust and faith and confidence in you. You were elected or appointed to reflect their vision of what they want the district to accomplish. And so it's very helpful to have, and it's a transparent process for your community, the goal setting piece, to have faith that you are really working diligently on improving opportunities and expanding those for kids.
And Gwen, where's the tracking tool?
The tracking tool is when you log in to the evaluation, you will be able to, and put in your district, you will be able to see the tracking. So thank you so much. Are there any other questions that we can answer for you?
So far, nothing is popping up in the Q&A or the chats.
Okay.
All right. Thank you so much, Gwen and Tim. A great presentation. Thank you so much. Everyone in the chat, thank you so much. Yes, Kim, this was very helpful. Thank you. Elizabeth says thank you. Mary, very helpful info. Thank you. Yes, thank you everyone in the chat. We really appreciate everyone's time here this morning and your interest in our content. We really appreciate you being here live. If you're watching this on recording, thank you as well. Few logistical items before we sign out here. Like I said in the beginning of the webinar, this webinar does offer 1 board member academy credit. So all of those who have stayed for the duration of the presentation in this room right now, thank you so much. And you will be receiving 1 BMA credit that will be reflected on your transcript in a couple business days due to it being a manual process on our end. If you have any question that may come up later today, tomorrow, next week, whenever, don't hesitate to reach out to really anyone at NJSBA, and we'll forward along to someone who can answer that question. But always, you're always encouraged to use our Find Your FSR tool. And if you don't know your field service representative already, you can use that tool and find them pretty quickly and contact them as well. Any final comments, Gwen, before we sign out here?
Just to say thank you. We're here to help. Reach out to your FSR, reach out to Mike, to me, and we will be happy to assist you in any way that we can always. And thank you to Tim and to another FSR who's not here this morning, Mary Ann Friedman, for their hard work on putting together this presentation. We are here to assist, and I think you can share these slides. They'll be available to you. You can share them with your board president, your full board, or we can send them to you as well. So, but they'll be available where you registered for this webinar. So thank you.
Thank you, Gwen. The recording will also be up and available on the same website, along with our NJSBA website. So if you go to njsba.org, under the trainings tab, click webinars, that's where you'll see this webinar recording. Hopefully later on today, I'll upload it. Worst case scenario, tomorrow. And that's where you'll see all of our previous webinars and a lot of great content upcoming as well. We have a ton of webinars this year, so definitely continue on checking that webpage. And of course, the weekly program updates that go out every Monday, school board note articles. We try to promote this, our webinars as much as possible because it is such great content. So again, thank you so much, Gwen. Tim, thank you as well. All the field service reps are always available and so great with our webinars and really everything. So shout out to all the field service reps as well. And thank you for joining us here live in the room. Again, if you're watching this on recording, thank you as well. I hope everyone has a great rest of your day, and we will be back